All right, today we're going to talk to you a little bit about how to properly cape your deer for a shoulder mount. Once you get your deer, first thing we're going to tell you is that you don't want to cut beyond where the rib cage comes together. So we use that as a guide. We usually gut the deer right to the point of where the rib cage comes together and stop at that point, because we really want pretty much from the part of this hide forward to make sure we have enough cape to do whatever kind of pose that you would like. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna find the knee joint on the deer, and we're gonna make a circular cut and take these legs off right here. So you just take your knife and you can go on the underside of the skin to kind of cut. And we'll find these joints and remove these legs. Okay, now that we have our front legs removed, and the reason that I leave as much front leg as I do on these is to make sure that in case a customer wants to do a pedestal style mount, a lot of those shoulder mounts will have, you know, a majority of that front part of that leg on there. So if you take it at the knee joint, you're gonna have plenty of skin there to do whatever kind of shoulder mount you'd like to do. So at this point in time, now that we have those front legs removed, we're gonna come down into here about where this sternum meets, and we're going to take a circular cut all the way around this chest cavity. Okay, so I'm right here. My knife basically stops right where those ribs come together. If I cut any further than that, it'd be cutting that rib cage and some of the cartilage. So that tells me that's where I need to start my circular cut. It goes right around the chest cavity. And always cut your hair from the underside of the skin. Don't ever cut through your hair. Cut from the underneath side of it, and you won't damage the hair. Again, this is going to leave us plenty of cape here to do any kind of shoulder mount you'd ever want to do, plus it gives us some extra. It's always better to have too much than not enough. So I'm going to continue around this deer all the way. Okay, I'm going to spin him a little bit and show you. All we've done is just make a circular cut all the way around the chest cavity of that deer. Okay. So those are the first three cuts that you're going to make. Circle here, circle around your chest cavity. Now this is the point where it gets kind of crucial that you follow the guideline that the animal gives you. And that is this line right here where you have the dark and the light hair that meet together. And the mistake that we commonly see a lot of people do is when they cut this, they cut through the armpit, which is actually going to be on your shoulder mount. So if we keep our knife directly on this dark and light hairline, keep it straight, come all the way back to our circular cut that's in the chest, we are not going to cut through the armpits of our deer, and that's exactly what you want to do with it. So take your knife and keep it right underneath the skin and just lift and slide, and it'll stay right on that dark and light hairline. And a sharp knife is always better. You're going to make more mistakes if you have a dull knife, so try to keep your knife as sharp as possible. I'm just being careful here to make sure that I don't go stray into the armpit of the deer. We keep our line that comes straight back. Just like that. You can see that line, we followed that line right down the leg, right back to our original circular cut. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. We're going to follow right up the line, dark and light hair. Just take your knife and just slide it and just follow that line right up through there. Remember, this isn't where you want to cut. Try to stay out of that. Stay right on the line. Once you get beyond the armpit, just bring it straight up to the original circle cut that you had in your chest. And you can see there that we've kept everything out of our armpits. That is the area we want to stay out of. So from this point in time, what we're going to do is we're just going to start working the skin all the way down to behind the head, and then we're going to cut the head off at the base. Okay, so at this point in time, we've made our 3 circular cuts. We've removed here, the first 2 circular cuts, this one right here that goes around the chest cavity, and then we've kept a straight line that comes all the way back into the chest of our deer. So at this point in time, all we're going to do is put a little tension on the skin and take our knife and just cut the membrane to separate the skin from the rest of the animal. And usually what I like to tell people is if you just cut the membrane, just focus on putting tension and just cutting the membrane. If you do nick the hide, it's not the end of the world. Most taxidermists can fix that without a problem. Obviously, the less we have to fix, the better. I generally like to kind of start right here in the chest and just continue to move my way down towards the head. It's okay if you leave some of the meat on the skin. That can all be taken off of the skin and, you know, later point in the process. The biggest key here is just try not to make you know, any extra cuts that we have to fix. But if you remove everything that we're showing you right here, virtually any shoulder mount or pedestal or anything like that, you're going to have plenty of cape. Your taxidermist is going to have plenty of cape to work with. And they can always trim it down if they need to. You can see it's coming right down off the chest here. Just going to continue right around these legs. A lot of people are too worried to cape their own deer, and they allow other people to cape their deer for them. But it really is a very simple process. And quite honestly, a lot of the people that think they know a lot really don't. So really the best thing you can do is just get a sharp knife, watch this video, and you'll find out that it's really a very simple process to do. And you don't have to go fast. Just take your time and you'll have the hide off there in no time. Gets a little tight here in the armpits. We'll just try to get in there and stretch it the best we can. Put some tension on the skin. Continue right here. Like I said, don't worry if you leave a little bit of the meat on the skin, it's not the end of the world. Better to leave a little meat on the skin than putting holes in it. Now that I've got this kind of down to a certain point here, I'm probably going to come back up here and start working the rest of the skin down so I can get it all kind of at one point to bring it down together. So we're going to start here and kind of go around this leg a little bit. And as you can see, we do have this deer hung up with a hoist. That this is really the optimum way to hang your deer is by the back leg, so that you can use gravity to let that skin kind of come down off of the rest of the carcass here. I guess while we're in the process of talking about caping a deer, we should also talk about you know, some of the things that we need to do with that deer while it's in the field. Like, you know, once you harvest the animal, what you have to realize is that once the heart quits beating, decomposition has begun. And your two worst enemies to this hide is heat and moisture. So really, the sooner that you can get that animal to your taxidermist or get it cooled and keep it dry, the better. If you're going to be spending the money to get a shoulder mount, you might as well do your very best to keep it in its optimum condition. But yeah, to get this deer to your taxidermist as soon as you can, because if you do everything right and you get it to the taxidermist when you should, you're gonna have the rest of your life to enjoy them. I see a lot of people that wait too long, or stick them in the freezer and bring them in 6 months later, and there can be issues with that. There can be freezer burn happen. A lot of things can happen with your deer, even with it being in a freezer. So really, you want to just get this cape off of it, be proud that you got your deer, and get it to your taxidermist so that he can do his job, and you're going to enjoy it for the rest of your life. So at this point in time, I'm spinning this deer and just trying to keep all the skin coming down together. Just makes it a little bit easier. Said, just cut the membrane. Right there's our exit hole on our deer. There's some kind of a wound here in the leg. You see that skin starting to release and come down. Now as you move down this neck, what you're going to find, this skin is going to get tighter and tighter. It doesn't pull as easily away from the body as it did up here when we were around the chest. So what you got to do, just get to where you put a little tension on it, and the slow and steady wins the race. As you can see, the skin starts to bunch up here as the more we roll down. But using gravity and you can see the whole time that I'm cutting, I'm putting tension with this hand. That's going to make your job a lot easier. Two reasons that you want to skin this all the way down to right at the base of the skull. For one, you don't waste all this neck meat. I have a lot of guys that'll come in here and cut them off right there. But, you want to save that all for the table. And two, the closer you bring it to that skull, the shorter the incision is going to be on your mount. And we're going to show you a way that you can even measure this deer after you have this skin off of here to kind of give it an idea of neck measurements and those kind of things. There's a misconceived spot on where people should measure to determine the actual size of their deer. And we're going to show you exactly how to measure it, just in case you want to measure it on your own. And you can even give it to your taxidermist, and he can either choose to go with the carcass measurements, which are the most accurate, but you can also take the skin, your taxidermist is going to take the skin, lay it out, and he's going to be able to make that deer what he was. So that's the misconception, is that if you leave all the meat on there, that helps the taxidermist. But in reality, it actually makes the job harder. So skin him down as tight as you can, and there'll be such a short little incision on the back of that deer when it's mounted, you'll never see it. You can see I'm to the point though where I can't even take the skin and roll it where it stretches. It actually is just kind of building up right here. So I just kind of have to pull it out away from the neck and the head there, because we're about where we're going from our neck into the skull portion of the deer. You can see here that it's starting to transition from the throat right into the, here's the bottom of the jaw on that deer. So we're going to get to where we're going to come right in here and cut straight back to the vertebrae, and I can feel the vertebrae just by moving the head. So we're going to cut straight into that vertebrae, kind of cut around the neck, and you don't even need a saw to take this off of here. If you get your knife in there in the right places, you'll be able to cut some of those tendons that are around that vertebrae and then just twist the head and it'll come right off. So that's what we're going to do right now, is I'm going to start cutting through this esophagus and some of these areas right in here. Come around this side. Kind of do the same thing. Just watch your knife that you're keeping your cape skin back away from where you're cutting. Also watch your fingers. Don't cut yourself. If you're not sure where that vertebrae is, just take your fingers and you can move that head and you can feel where that joint is. So let your fingers determine where you should be cutting. And it might take you a minute just to find the exact spot where it hinges. We've got a pretty good idea right here. We'll see if we can find our spot. I can tell that hinge is down here a little bit more, and you'll hear it and you'll feel the tension start to pop as you get it in the right spot. If you're not certain, sure, you can take a saw and just cut right here. Just make sure that you keep your cape away from it so you don't end up cutting your cape too. Now at this point in time, I know that I've kind of found about where that socket connects to the base of that skull, and I know I have cut some of that. So if you have somebody that'll help you, and they can grab the arms on that, or the legs on that deer, and you can take the head, you can twist it. It might be a little bit attached. Just keep your hand on the antlers. He's on there by just a tiny little piece here, and he's off. And what I'd like to do is lay this cape out and show you exactly what we have. Okay, so I'm just going to show you now that we've got our cape laying here, what it looks like. We've got plenty of armpit, there's plenty of brisket, and we have plenty of length on the back of the cape to go over basically any shoulder mount that you would want to have done. But you can see by cutting on that hairline that we have all of our armpit in here. Like I said, that's a crucial part in the mount. So at that point in time, if you do your job and keep your cape clean and dry and cape it in this way, your taxidermist should have no complaints. Okay, so now we're going to look back on our deer carcass here just to give you a good idea as to how much of that cape you really need off of that animal. And basically you're almost going from the midpoint of the body of that deer and taking everything forward just to make sure that you have plenty of cape to work with. Something else that I'm going to show you, these are typically the measurements that your taxidermist would take on your deer, which would be tight right at the point of where it was removed. Like this deer here is going to be about a 19.5, maybe right at 20 inches, right at the atlas portion of the deer. And then generally a taxidermist will take, keeping the tape tight right here under the throat and coming back down the neck, around about 4 to 5 inches down the top of the neck. This deer here at the swell would be, he wasn't really that swollen, could be about 21.25. So he would have been around 20 inches here, around 21.25 at the swell. But I get a lot of guys that want to take a tape and wrap it all different directions, say it was 27 inches, and well, those aren't accurate measurements. We want to make your deer exactly what he was and not what he wasn't. So if you want to take some of those basic measurements, that gives you an idea as to what he truly was. But if you do these things, your taxidermist is going to be extremely pleased. You're giving him everything that you need to do as a sportsman to really get a world-class mount. And that's our tip on how to cape out a whitetail.